Hey folks, what's up? Welcome to the third show of Here and Now. We have today with us Samar Verma, who's CEO of Digital Media. Sam, it's a pleasure to have you. We've been chasing you for the longest time. Thanks for taking the time out to
Sorry
be
for that. Life is tough in the lockdown, so sorry for the chase.
I knew I just had to poke you a little bit to get that stuff going.
But as always, lovely to kind of catch up. It's always great kind of catching up and kind of, having a conversation with you.
Super, great. Pleasure's all mine, Sam. Thanks a ton. Okay.
Yeah.
How's it going, Sam? How's the lockdown treating you?
Yeah, lockdown's been okay. I think, for everyone else, initially there was anxiety because you didn't know what you were getting into. There was uncertainty. But I think, Samar, this is great because, as human beings, you realize that you're insignificant. You have very little in control. And I think it's a great learning in that sense. So, eventually the anxiety is kind of given way to submission. So you submit to the new reality and you learn that, you need to adapt to this. You just need to react. And, to be honest, I'm living it by the day. So I'm not even thinking of tomorrow, day after. I was having a call with the investors the other day and they asked me saying, how are the next 3 months looking? I said, to be honest, I don't have a clue about the next 3 minutes. So, let's not talk about 3-month projections. Let's talk about whether I'm going to be alive tomorrow, day after. And the same question kind of holds true for you guys as well. So he was a little taken aback with the frankness, but that is the reality of it. I think businesses and all of us as people, we've planned way too much. We've planned to the T, planned about the next house, the next car, the next business venture we want to do. And this is in some sense a great slap on our faces to tell us that, listen, buddy, keep jumping the dots. Somebody else is joining the lines. You're not in control. Understand that. So I think for me, it's been, while this realization dawned on me earlier as well, but I think, it's nature and it's life in general reiterating it time and again.
Wow. So did the investors listen to you? Did they settle for a 3-minute thing?
What do you think? These are, I don't want to say it like that, but yeah, we all had a great laugh, but we went back to the 3-month projection, saying how, buddy, you're a funny, humorous guy, but then do tell us how the business is going to fare the next 3 months.
Okay, that's an improvement because usually the plans are with the investors like 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years and stuff. Is that stuff still happening?
It's an interesting shift. I'll tell you this, right? The investors are heavily relying on entrepreneurs to tell them as to how the business is going to fare. This is really the time where I think leadership and entrepreneurial skill sets will get tested to the absolute T. Your leadership in terms of how you handle the situation, the people, and you have to think about, compassion and, your moral responsibilities, to be honest. You can't just be ruthless as a business and take decisions. While that is important, and I wouldn't deny that because you're responsible for a business, you're in a leadership position, you have to ensure the sustainability of it.
Right.
Then, you can't also ignore the people aspect of it. And that is exactly what the investors are relying on the entrepreneurs for, because the entrepreneurs are closest to the business and the people.
So Sam, you've spoken about sustainability and, that's a buzzword nowadays, especially in the last 2 months. Everyone's talking about sustainability. What exactly does this mean?
Yes, it's funny that, this has become like the words come in vogue in the last 2 months, but the reality of it is that look at all the, so-called lalas, as we kind of laughed on them, as these new young, chic entrepreneurs that we thought we were, and we laughed at all of these old school business houses, but they were built on very solid, fundamentally solid models, and they focused on sustainability, by which I mean that there was a business model that drove a certain amount of cash for the business to pay off its bills, pay off its salaries, take care of its growth, and then look at capital as a tool for expansion, as a tool for growth. Capital as a tool for existence never was part of the plan. It's only with the startups that, where money was being raised on Excel sheets and money was being raised at valuations that were unrealistic. Not that it's not great. Look, it's created a lot of wealth and it's created a lot of buzz for, a lot of the young talent to become entrepreneurs. It's excited a lot of us, right? But I think somewhere in all of this, we forgot that, the fundamentally strong businesses are the ones that will last every kind of storm. Look, the reality is, COVID is the newest challenge that businesses face, but it's not like, you haven't had disruptions in the past. Look at the last 30, 40 years, every 3 or 4 years, there's something that will come and hit your business, in a very deep fashion. So, you've had the 2008 banking debacle, you've had multiple such scenarios. Now, the point is, that businesses need to factor in these kind of scenarios. Sure, COVID is an unprecedented scenario. We haven't seen anything like this, but disruptions happened in the past as well. So if your business is not built to be able to take disruption and is completely dependent on a absolutely growth-oriented scenario, where everything is absolutely fine, and the markets are growing at 30-40%, and your market share is growing simultaneously, or in a similar range, then I think those businesses are not fundamentally very strong. Fundamentally strong businesses are the ones that are basically also ready to weather multiple storms that are going to kind of come in the way. These are headwinds, and you can't expect to have tailwinds at all points. You will have headwinds as well. It's like that's the law of life. So I think businesses need to build that in and factor that in.
I want to ask you, Sam, then why were we chasing uh, uh, customers, revenues, and if I was to just put it all in one word, growth? Why were we running after growth so much at the lack of everything else?
If I answer that in one word, look, and I've also been there. I mean, at Folk as well. To be honest, my model in the last 2.5-3 years has changed. I think we chase growth because there is something about us humans which is driven by ego, right? I think this is an egoistical war. We love to put out big numbers. We love to say, hey, I'm 100 crores, I'm 500 crores, I'm 1,000 crores. It's the same goddamn chase for personal wealth as well. I mean, at the end of the day, to be honest, I mean, let's talk about salaried people like you and I, and we're not talking about billionaires here. We know that beyond a certain level of income, the life is not going to change too much,
Right.
but we still
Exactly.
chase those numbers.
Right.
We still chase those numbers. Right? And I think that also transitions and rather kind of transpires into businesses as well, where businesses are egoistical entities as well, just like humans, because they're a reflection of the leadership, they're a reflection of the people who are running it. So to be that largest entity, to be that largest kind of market share entity in the space is something that drives us. Sure, it does create value. There's no two ways about it. The value creation is significant. But on to kind of only go for that and not necessarily think of whether it's sustainable, whether this can basically work out in the longer run for me. Am I creating values? Like let's be honest today, right? Look at the Mahindras and the Tatas and all of these guys. Do you even hear about their valuation? Do you even hear about the round that they raised? You
Right.
only hear about their businesses and how they basically eventually over a period of time build such tremendous value,
True.
and that value is all customer oriented. That value is the trust that they've built, the absolute deep engagement they have with their customer base, whether it's the B2B or the B2C side of it. And those things happen over a period of time. Today, when you have exponential growth models coming in, these models are very broken. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like I've used a lot of commerce platforms, like all of us. And when I look at Paytm today, it's a great example. I mean, it's fantastic with what Vijay Shekhar Sharma has created for a market like India. I mean, he's definitely a pioneer in that sense. But when you look at the back-end service of Paytm on the commerce side, it's just so broken. And then you're thinking that, these 13, 20, $50 billion businesses, are these sustainable because the back-end customer service is so bad? Am I going to buy anything off Paytm again? When I go to a Tata Croma versus a Paytm and I buy something from a Croma, my experience is completely different, because that process, that whole customer orientation has been built over decades of understanding the business, decades of understanding customers.
Are you talking about Chroma online or offline, Sam?
Both, right? I mean, for me, the lines are blurred. I don't think of my experience as offline or online. I think of it as a platform, right? I mean, if I'm buying it off Chroma in a shop versus me buying it off Paytm on an online store, it's the same thing, right? For me, it's the experience and the trust I have in the brand. So, like today, for example, if I have to buy something, I might go back to a Chroma because my trust is very high with Chroma. That if I have a problem, they will give me a solution to it. Unlike Paytm, that might, and this is not about singling out Paytm. Don't get me wrong. It's just an
Right.
example I'm stating. But
Right. I understand.
there are multiple such online businesses that are very broken at the back end and are not really customer oriented. But it's like the face and the front facing is superb. It's this 13, 20, $50 billion business with great valuation, great money. But the back and the back end, the core is very weak. And I feel that, in my view, look, I run a much smaller business, so I'm no one to comment on these things. But in my view, and that's how I've also changed. My view was exactly the same. Like I was chasing 100 crores in a media setup, and we hit that. Today,
Right.
my focus is to try and build fundamentally strong business. My product is supremely strong.
Is this all about an absence of character or values or something like that in the ecosystem? Are we talking
No,
about?
you know, honestly, I wouldn't take it that far to say there's absence of values. I think an entrepreneur starts off with great intent. I have deep respect for having done this for, myself for the last 6, 7 years. I don't think any entrepreneur at the end of the day, sure, success is great, but you do it for the love of it and you do it for the madness of it, right? So, I think the problem, and that's what I've understood, is especially in a country like ours, there's complete lack of mentorship, right? There's a lot of
Okay.
mentorship, complete lack of mentorship. Like,
Beautiful.
I mean, the decisions that I'm taking today, I could have taken those decisions 3 or 4 years back without having to kind of go through my set of problems and the issues that I faced and then learning from them if there was the right amount of mentorship.
But
There,
aren't the VCs supposed to mentor as well?
yeah, I might not be able to do my next round if I state this extremely transparently and openly, but I've had interactions with multiple VCs.
Right.
Uh, you know, VCs are more about driving yield on their investments. Let me put it in a very simple way. Uh, and for them, I think, for a lot of them, look, don't generalize my statement to think that the
Sure,
world
sure,
operates like that.
sure.
I see it from a perspective saying, okay, look, I've seen some of my colleagues run companies in the more evolved part of the world, which is the Western side of the world,
Yeah.
where I think a lot of the VCs have made significant amounts of returns on their capital, and therefore the focus is very driven towards entrepreneurship, building out value, longer term value, protecting the entrepreneur. Unfortunately, in India, the way I see it is that, money is a new concept for us. We all are slightly vulture like, where it's all about the yield. It's about, getting the best cut, getting the best deal possible, and this is true for everything from, VCs to all sets of investors,
Right.
including the entrepreneurs also,
Right.
so we are very happy to dilute very easily.
Sure.
We're very happy to kind of raise money at lower valuations, do whatever.
Okay.
I constantly keep reading this in the papers, and in, it's widely kind of spoken of in the press as well. Why do we not have a Facebook out of India? Why do we not have a Google? Why do we not have this and that?
Oh, the way
Dude,
to my mind.
a Mark Zuckerberg controls almost 40% of Facebook. It is unthinkable in India for an entrepreneur to have raised that kind of money and to have 40% of equity in his company. It does not happen. Look at everything from Zomato to
Why
Swiggy.
not? Why not? What's the answer?
No, the answer is exactly this, because of the vulture-like mentality that we tend to have, because money as a concept is very new. So we are trying to constantly kind of cut the best deals, in which obviously, look, as an entrepreneur, I'm thinking, hey, if I build a $1 billion entity and I have 3% of it, I still am rich. But the point is, you know what you've put in to build that $1 billion entity. 3% is bullshit for a bloody guy who's built $1 billion or $2 billion entity. But we are okay with it because, we seem to think that, oh, this is, at least I've done this, at least I've built this out, at least I got the opportunity to.
Right.
The evolved markets operate very differently. It's about protecting the management teams and the entrepreneurs. The first, you protect that, you protect their interest. Because if you protect their interest, only then will they grow the business to a point where disproportionate value could happen for everyone, right? In my view and my experience, the entrepreneur comes last. The entrepreneur is if I may say so as blatantly, if I can, the entrepreneur is a salaried employee with equity who's supposed to drive value for the investors. It
Right.
is,
Right.
you can underline that. You can underline that, and that's the truth of a market. No matter who says what, even if people have to kind of say nice things, the reality is the equity speaks for them. Uh, and unfortunately, the ecosystem also is like that it's all built to take advantage of the fact that most people don't understand this. Like, for example, if you were to go out in the market today to raise a seed round of, let's say, $1 million, you're talking to most people who will ask you for 50% to your face, saying, okay, I will take a 55-60% of your company for $1 million. That's typically how seed rounds happen.
Right.
I mean, if you've given up 60% at a seed level, what are you talking about? You're talking about potentially being down to sub 10% by the time a Series B happens for you.
Right.
So having said that, there are some mature investors that you find, great conversations, I've had who think like this, but in general, the market in India operates in this fashion, or rather, I would say markets in all developing countries operates in this fashion, because,
Yeah.
you see that sensibility, or rather that thought process being pretty widespread in the country today, right? I mean, I was listening to Nitin Gadkari's interview the other day, very interestingly.
Right.
I mean, beautiful interview. I don't know if you've seen it, with the one that he's done with Farhad.
No, I
He
haven't.
said, I mean, it's a little sad that we tend to kind of, eventually call some of these big business entrepreneurs, goons and, people who've stolen money. He said, look, when the going was good, they gave millions of jobs. The businesses went through trouble. We should respect them for what they built out. Sure, they have a liability, but the government should sit down and have a conversation with them and not brand them as people who ran away, and not brand them as, robbers, or not brand them as people who've kind of cheated the country. Because it takes a lot to run a business and build a large business. To build
For sure.
a 15, 20,000, 25,000 crore business. I mean, I built a 90, 100 crore business. I can tell you, it took the Mickey out of me. So I can't even imagine what it would be like to build a 15,000 crore business.
Right.
And somewhere I feel that this whole mentality of saying, because you're rich, you would have obviously been unethical, and you would have obviously kind of cheated the country. You're a bloody robber. These are things that I think have become a widespread, generic kind of a thought process, which you see. I mean, it's not like these are not my personal experiences, but this is what you see on social. This is what you see as usual conversation. And it's unfortunate that somebody like Amalia gets branded in a certain way, or somebody else for that matter of fact. I mean, sure, he had a great life, but he deserves it. Why should he not? But he built tremendous value for the country as well.
Right. Is there any difference, Sam? You've been on both sides. You've been a professional. You're an entrepreneur now. You think there's a difference? And you think this is for everyone? Yeah, lots of guys I see out there, and we do a lot of startup founders coaching and budding, emerging entrepreneurs coaching, and a lot of guys have this mind that, yeah, mere andar hai.
I don't know if it's about, whether it's something that everybody can tread on or not. I'll just say one thing here. If you think you are someone who can let go of your ego completely, and you can be reborn as a nobody when you're starting out, then you're definitely fit for it. Because I'll give you a small example. I mean, I was in times doing very well. I had a very large portfolio that I used to manage, a decent team, a very large team under me. You walk into an agency, you'll have the agency head meeting you at every point in time. Whenever you kind of want a meeting, they'll give it to you. When I started Folk, the first 1 year, I was waiting outside for an hour and a half to meet the planners. Right? The same guys who probably, the same guys who'd call their bosses the minute I kind of entered the agency.
So tell me about Folk, Sam. I remember when we met 3 years ago and we were discussing business. I remember in our conversations, you used a couple of words a lot, especially one word, which was hustler, gangster. Has that changed over a period of time? Do these things, do the values of brands really change, or values are there forever?
Oh, completely. It's such a cringing thought for me to even kind of think about the fact that I would have used those words, because it clearly shows, my exuberance at that point in time, and to some extent my maturity as well. I mean, these are all things that, I mean, it's like, you're 29, 30, 31, you're like this young bloke out there trying to do something, and you're like, I'm going to take a shot at this. And you think of yourselves, you romanticize about, the positions that you're in, or you romanticize about the position that you can be in. I think eventually, you calm down a lot, and so does the business. You focus on the right things, like I said. In terms of the macro focus of the business, it moves away from that to say, I just want to be the best product out there. I want to do the best quality content out there. I want to have the most meaningful conversations with my customer base, and the money will flow.
Beautiful. Do you think, talking about change, and you mentioned that point just a while ago, do you think these things are here to stay? These new ideas and these new beliefs are here to stay?
Yeah, I don't know. Look, I'll tell you this. One always thought that change was driven by people. And I think in a very long time, you've seen a scenario where change is not driven by people, but change is just being driven organically by nature, by life. Answer the question in a more direct way, because this change is driven by nature and by life, I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to change the way we look at businesses completely. In fact, not only businesses, I think it's going to change human aspirations completely. I don't think, we will come out the same after the 2.5, 3 months of a lockdown. I think our priorities, our life, our thought process would have completely changed. I mean, I hope for the good, where compassion will come in, where, we will look at, more welfare-oriented models. We will look at, more balanced kind of models where, we have equal priority being given to different aspects of life. I think we'd all become very, very driven by the capitalistic side of things. And I think somewhere these 3 months or 4 months, and I hope it's 3 or 4 months and doesn't continue beyond that, but from the looks of it, it will. Whatever that time frame is, I think it's going to change human aspirations completely.
So you got a daughter, Sam, Ziana.
Yeah. Mm.
What's the world you want to create for her and leave behind?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, interesting question, right? Because I was talking to my wife the other day and I was telling her, I said, it's a bit unfortunate in terms of the world that we live in and what we're leaving behind for our future generations, because, we're regressing, as a society, we seem to be regressing with political divide and religious divide and all of that coming in, and kids being very conscious of their identity. Look at the conversations around you. You think they're not absorbing those conversations? You think they're not watching TV when you're watching it? You think they're not watching the news when they're watching it? When the divide is being spoken of that widely, you think it's not registering with them at some level? They're thinking of themselves to be of a certain religion, and therefore that's becoming their identity. When was that supposed to be our identity to begin with? And it goes beyond that for me, right? It's not only about that. It's also about, for example, what social is doing to our kids, and it's done to a whole generation.
Right.
We want instant gratification. We will do anything for that. We want very quick success. Our value systems have got compromised in that sense, right? I mean, today we've come to a point where my validation is coming from those 50 things that are happening on social. And that is what worries me deeply about an individual. If your validation is external and not internal, I think there's a huge problem that you're kind of creating for the society. So
Right.
I feel, the, the world that I would like for my daughter to kind of grow up in is where she seeks internal validation and she's very clear about, her value system and, what basically matters to her. At the same time, I think, you're realistic about the expectations. You're realistic about how your kids will turn out. Like, Kame and I talk about this, me and my brother lives in the UK and I talk to him constantly. I think, we need to be prepared for a world where your child might be dating someone at 13 or 14 or even earlier, and probably be exposed to physical intimacy at a very early age, right? You need to kind of be open to those concepts. You cannot behave like how our parents behaved. So I think, while you're trying to do some bits of what your parents did, you're also trying to adapt to the world that you live in and bring in, some concepts from there as well, because you want your child to you want your child to open up and have an extremely open conversation with you.
Right.
And look, I mean, so setting an expectation right is very important while you try and kind of drive the right set of values with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Lovely. Sam, that was a pleasure, man. That was beautiful.
Thanks, man. As always, lovely chatting with you.
Thanks for coming on. That
All
was
of this,
so deep
you
and
have the knack of bringing out all of this in people. So I mean, it's difficult to hold back when you're having a conversation. Chal, lovely,
thanks a ton.
good stuff.
Thanks a ton. Have fun. Have a
Thanks.
good Friday. Have a good weekend.
Take care. Stay safe.
You too.
Bye.
You too. See you.